Hello again, everyone, and thanks once again for joining us this Sunday's edition of Alaska Weather on the 20th day of December 2020. I'm Dave Percy, a meteorologist with the National Weather Service, hosting today's show once again. Up on the hazardous weather graphic, we have some highlighted areas here for the incoming storm. We'll start in the south there for the eastern Kenai Peninsula, western Prince William Sound, Turnagain Arm, especially Portage Valley, and the upper hillside of Anchorage, higher elevations. Look, that's a high wind watch that goes into effect tomorrow afternoon and tomorrow night, and looking for actually Monday evening through Tuesday. And 40 to 60 mile per hour winds expected there with gusts to 85 miles per hour. And then up to the north, high wind warning out for the Alaska Range. And that's from 6 p.m. Monday, and that extends through Tuesday, actually into Tuesday night for the high wind warning in the Alaska Range. They're looking for 40 to 55 mile per hour winds in that time frame, Monday night through Tuesday, with gusts to 75 miles per hour, and that extends over mostly toward the Alaska Range in the northern Kuskokwim Valley. So McGrath and Nikolai, you're not in the warning area there, actually. And then up to the north there, for the North Slope, Brooks Range, Arctic Coast, into the Noatak Valley, Kobuk Valley. And those areas are wind chill advisories, which are out for tonight, for wind chills tonight into possibly midday Monday, for wind chills 45 to 55 degrees below zero. Otherwise, starting with St. Lawrence Island, there's a blizzard warning out there that kicks into effect for tomorrow, late tomorrow afternoon and tomorrow night for St. Lawrence Island, Bering Strait coast, as well as the southern Seward Peninsula there, and over toward the eastern Norton Bay, or Norton Sound, and the Lotto Hills down into the Yukon Delta, with a winter storm warning out for the lower Yukon River Valley area. And that's, again, for snow and blowing snow, looking for anywhere 5 to 7 inches of new snow possibly falling in some areas there, with winds gusting as high as 70 miles per hour, St. Lawrence Island. That'll create definitely visibilities down to less than a quarter mile, or just whiteout conditions. And also for the Yukon Delta, Bering Strait coast there. And inland areas, though, in the shaded area, in the winter storm warning area, winds gusting anywhere from 50 to 60 miles per hour. And then Galena, you're under a winter weather advisory for the same storm, but conditions won't be as severe. And then there's a winter storm watch out for the Seward Peninsula inland areas and the north side there, Shishmaref. Also for the Selawik Valley and Kotzebue, winter storm watch out again for tomorrow, late tomorrow afternoon, tomorrow night into Tuesday. So from there, we'll go to the satellite imagery, and you can see still showers with a upper level trough hanging back Kenai Peninsula into the Gulf of Alaska. And over south central Alaska, a couple more inches of snow falling today in some areas, and lighter amounts other areas. And also some showers up into the North Gulf Coast, as well into the northern Panhandle, with showers not too heavy on the precipitation there. Winds not all that significant either. 0.15 of an inch fell, for example, at Gustavus, and down at Ketchikan with Klawock had 0.15 of an inch, along with Gustavus, and Metlakatla had 0.15 also. And some areas had less, and if areas had more, it wasn't too much more than that, but just kind of a lighter precipitation pattern there. And then out to the west, you can see the storm system winding up and moving up the first low center there, coming just southwest of Unmak Island, and that brought 70 mile per hour wind gusts this afternoon to Nikolsky, and winds are kicking up to about 40 miles an hour at Unalaska, and about 35 miles an hour at St. George there southeast of St. Paul Island. and also picking up about 35 miles an hour over toward the extreme, or toward False Pass on the Alaska Peninsula. Is going to be coming up tonight with precipitation increasing. Otherwise, showery conditions, AKwx out to the west, northern Bering Sea, some areas of light snow, winds gusting about 30 miles an hour, St. Lawrence Island, 30 to 35 miles an hour at Gamble, and just some light snow shower activity up there and over the southwest interior, nothing too significant, although Iliamna picked up, let's see, I have it written down here, 2 to 4 inches of snow, give or take. Iliamna today, and Gulkana and Fairbanks, about 1 to 2 inches of snow fell. Still some light snow falling in the Fairbanks area, areas of the eastern interior, again down in the Copper River Basin. And let's see, moving on to the surface analysis, persistent low there right over Resurrection Bay, kept the snow showers going, cloudy skies, but lighter today over southern Alaska there, and then the moisture, as I spoke of, over the Panhandle. And again, that tight pressure field of the low pulling up near Atka Island, where they are getting winds out of the southwest at about 35 to 40 miles an hour. And again, that 70 mile an hour wind gust at Nikolsky with rain and moisture spreading up toward the Pribilof Islands and eventually pushing eastward. And cleared out Kodiak Island today, southern Cook Inlet clearing out. Winds gusting about 30 to 35 miles an hour there at Homer, with some persistent light snow shower activity, but winds gusted 40 miles an hour this afternoon, Kodiak Island out of the west-southwest. That cleared definitely the east side out and into the precipitation there. And moving on to the forecast for tonight, gale warnings come into the Alaska Peninsula with increasing rain there and a surge of warm air coming northward, and then snow and possible blowing snow on the increase there from Togiak Bay to Cape Newenham and Nunivak Island, and later on for St. Lawrence Island, that low center kind of pulling back there, coming northward, 954 millibars west-southwest of the Pribilof Islands. Another one swinging around 964 millibars there south of the central Aleutians, and that weakening but persistent low now over the eastern North Gulf Coast, extending the Panhandle, keeping it unsettled there for the southeast coast, but dry with light winds over just about all of interior Alaska right out to the Arctic coast. And then for tomorrow, the snow in the increase for the Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta, especially the Yukon Delta, St. Lawrence Island areas, with a big increase in the wind and rain for the eastern Alaska Peninsula, Bristol Bay, Kodiak Island, and all that on the increased temperatures in the upswing. So snow will change over to rain and snow mixed to just plain rain, especially the farther south you are throughout the day tomorrow from the Kenai Peninsula on down into Bristol Bay. And stays windy with showers for the Aleutians. And the northern and eastern interior remain dry with cooler temperatures and still some lingering rain or snow showers scattered, isolated by tomorrow afternoon for the Panhandle, with a very weak remnant of a trough there, mainly over the northern areas. Could be some clearing as well. Otherwise, for Tuesday, low pressure tracks just east of Kodiak Island there. You can see a very tight gradient developing over the Gulf of Alaska and right up along the North Gulf Coast. Prince William Sound, there are hurricane force wind warnings out. Prince William Sound and the North Gulf Coast for 70 knot winds, east-southeast winds there, 70 knots. And yes, I said Prince William Sound, 70 knot winds in the forecast, the marine forecast anyway. And windy conditions all across southern Alaska. Again, the winds Alaska range up to 70 miles an hour. Blowing snow improving there over the Yukon Delta, but still pretty well still snow and blowing snow, Seward Peninsula, St. Lawrence Island, up to the northwest coast. Lows tonight, 25 to 35 below, northeast interior out to the eastern Arctic coast, and below zero, near zero, right along the Yukon Delta coast, 7 at St. Lawrence Island. And in the 30s for the Panhandle, and 5 below to 15 above for southern Alaska, 20s Kodiak Island. Highs for tomorrow, 30s for the Panhandle and 40 for the southern Kenai Peninsula, lower 40s Kodiak Island, Alaska Peninsula, and below zero north of the Alaska Range. Lows the following morning, of course below zero north of the Alaska Range, but warming over the southern areas. You can see just lower 30s Bristol Bay, lower 20s south central Alaska, and upper 20s to lower 30s for the Panhandle, followed by highs on Tuesday afternoon, 35 to 45 southern Alaska, Bristol Bay, and 35 to 45 for the southeast coast.
And now, Aviation weather around Alaska.
First line weather graphic we've got for Monday morning. Marginal VFR starting up in the north, marginal VFR, Arctic coast, some of the north slope, and then eastern half of the state, interior, right on down to Matanuska Valley, Prince William Sound, across the Copper River Basin, marginal with IFR from the eastern Copper River Basin down to the eastern North Gulf Coast to Yakutat. Marginal VFR, most of the panhandle except the central areas, and a band of IFR there from the western Aleutians up and north of the Pribilofs and then back into the southwest coast and western Bristol Bay, Togiak Bay, Dillingham area. And IFR building there along and south of the Alaska Peninsula, sliding northeastward into western Kodiak Island. For tonight, for Monday afternoon, we've got IFR now increasing from southwest to northeast and from south to north. All of the North Gulf Coast, Prince William Sound, southern Kenai Peninsula, Cook Inlet to the eastern slopes of the western Alaska Range, pushing up across the western Susitna Valley, and also southwest coast there, Togiak Bay, right on up to about Cape Romanzoff, Nunivak Island, St. Lawrence Island, and also along the Nalaudo Hills there and into the Kuskokwim Valley. VFR diminishing up over the interior with a band of marginal VFR along and south of the Brooks Range, northern Kobuk, northern Koyukuk, and the Yukon Flats. And then north slope VFR, but marginal along the central Arctic coast. And for the Tuesday morning outlook, we've got VFR there. Coastal areas, say from Old Sitka on down across Prince of Wales Island, and then off to the east and north marginal. And we got VFR north of the Alaska Range from the central interior right up to the Arctic coast, and then IFR lined up there from the Chukchi Seas, across Seward Peninsula, Bering Strait, of course, on down the Yukon Kuskokwim Delta, especially along the coast, Nunivak Island, into Bristol Bay, Alaska Peninsula, Aleutian Range, and then still lingering with that upslope flow on the eastern slopes of the western Alaska Range. Good for IFR, Kamishak Bay, Barren Islands IFR, Fogneck Island IFR, up the east side of the Kenai Peninsula, Montague Island, western Prince William Sound IFR. And for the afternoon, still we've got IFR, western Cook Inlet from southern Cook Inlet up along the eastern slopes of the western Alaska Range, and another batch there over the Auckland Mountains, southwest mountains there north of Togiak Bay or north of Bristol Bay. Maybe southern Kuskokwim Valley, but it looks like becoming VFR up toward Nikolai and McGrath. IFR, though, Yukon Delta, Nunivak Island, St. Lawrence Island, and St. Matthew Island, and just a patch of IFR there, kind of just north of Adak, otherwise marginal with the Bering Sea and the Aleutians, Alaska Peninsula, southern Panhandle, VFR, northern marginal VFR, Arctic coast, north slope into the Brooks Range, in the interior, all VFR. Monday passes, Anatuva occasionally marginal tomorrow. And that again, I'll go with marginal to start, VFR into the afternoon, early evening. Lake Clark and Merrill starting out, just look for deteriorating conditions throughout the day, becoming IFR, especially on the eastern entrance. And rainy, VFR to IFR, eastern approach, otherwise becoming marginal. And for windy, marginal VFR at times, lowering conditions, southern approach late in the day. Isabel, marginal VFR. Mentasta, VFR with increasing marginal VFR there on the southern entrance. And Tanita, VFR to marginal conditions tomorrow. Portage, VFR to IFR. And Chilkoot and White, marginal VFR at times throughout the day Monday. Freezing levels, 2,000 feet up over the eastern Aleutians, Alaska Peninsula. And well south of the Panhandle, they're now even south of the Queen Charlotte's at the surface along the North Gulf Coast. Icing, considerable moderate rime icing with some moisture sliding northeastward there. Alaska Peninsula, Kodiak Island, up into Cook Inlet, Kenai Peninsula, Prince William Sound, and then some more out to the west, lesser significant icing, but still considerable moderate in areas are possibly mixed, but mostly off the coast. Jet stream system coming in, big upper low there over the western Bering Sea and Aleutians, slowing down as it moves, and that's going to start pumping warmer air northward. But tomorrow, midday or early, 95 to 105 knot winds there coming in across southwest Alaska, 40 to 65 knot southwest flow, southern Alaska, Kodiak Island, and at 3,000 feet, pretty strong winds heading up toward the Kodiak Island, Alaska Peninsula area in Bristol Bay, and also up there from Nunivak Island, northeasterly is about 60 knots. That translates into quite an area of considerable moderate chop, increasing from south-southwest to north-northeast tomorrow. right up in the southwest interior, Kodiak Island, and the central Aleutians below about 6,000 feet.
Welcome back to another edition of Alaska Weather Facts. I'm meteorologist Dave Snyder, and joining us once again is Eric Stevens, our good friend from GINA, the Geographic Information Network of Alaska, based up at UAF. And thanks for joining us, Eric. Really appreciate it.
Oh, happy to be here, Dave.
We love to hear about all the fascinating developments, new and old, and how we're using the tools here, especially around Alaska. And I've got to think that, satellite meteorology right now is a fascinating time to be involved in. If we go back to the first satellite, Tyros, back in 1960, I think is when we got some of those first pictures. Weather and meteorology probably changed that day for a whole lot of people, and it's still changing today, right?
Oh, you know it. Satellite imagery is so important, and it's getting better all the time. Yeah. Of course, never perfect, but especially for us in Alaska, where there are other data sets like radars and weather balloons are so thinly spread. Right. The satellite is the great equalizer because the satellite sees everything.
Right.
Yeah. Right. We've got one particular issue in volcanic ash detection.
That's a big deal here. Yeah.
You know it. If you fly an airplane into volcanic ash, your jet engine might just fail. And an airplane without engines is in a world of hurt. Sure. So if there's a volcano that goes off, satellite imagery is the way to track that plume of ash and to tell pilots this is where you need to not be to avoid this ash plume. And there's a phrase out there, what's the difference? What's the difference?
Okay.
Well, it turns out, what we're going to discuss today, that the difference is everything. There's a technique called channel differencing.
Okay.
That if you take one piece of the spectrum of what the satellite detects and a slightly different wavelength of that spectrum, even though those two images might look similar, magical things happen when you subtract one from the other. And they reveal information that was already there, but it was hard to find until you did that subtraction.
That sounds like Nicolas Cage in National Treasure when he's got those fancy glasses and he's flipping one up and back and forth. I mean, is this what we're talking about?
Let's go more highbrow and talk Michelangelo.
Oh,
so apparently Michelangelo made some amazing sculpture, and someone said, Michael, that's amazing. How did you do it? And Michelangelo's reply allegedly was, well, in that rock, the statue was already in there.
Right.
I just scraped away the unnecessary bits. In satellite meteorology, sometimes there are meteorological features that are in the data, but you can't see it until you combine or difference some of the channels.
Okay.
And we've got a case, good old Pavlov volcano goes off now and then.
Sure.
And you can observe directly a picture of the volcano. Just take it with your iPhone. You can see a volcano going off.
Yep.
Right. But if you want to get the broad view, we need satellite to do that. Now, there are a couple of wavelengths that we can look at. So what's a wavelength? That's the amount of space between a peak and a valley and another peak in a certain part of the electromagnetic spectrum. We're going to look at 12 micron wavelength and 10.8 micron wavelength.
What is a micron?
So what's a micron? Yeah, we're getting into the geek department now. A micron is a unit of length, and it is quite tiny. We're looking at what's called long wave wavelengths.
Okay.
But it takes 25,000 of these microns to make an inch. A human blood cell is about 5 microns across. So when we're talking about 12 micron imagery as allegedly long wave, well, that's relative.
Pretty short for light.
Yeah, it's other part of the, it's just an expression for the spectrum there.
Okay.
So we can look at a 12 micron image, say a satellite image. At 12 microns, we're seeing a heat signature here, really, and the way this color enhancement works is the yellow and the red stuff is high cold clouds down here over the Gulf of Alaska into South Central. And if you were asked, where do you find the volcanic ash plume in this image?
Hey, where do you find the volcanic plume in this image?
It's hard to do. I'm not sure I could find it. If you were to look at this image and just say, show me what jumps out at you here, I'd say, well, nothing really. Well, let's look. So 12 micron doesn't help us. Let's look at 10.8 microns.
All right.
All right, look at that. It's practically the same image. So where's this volcanic ash? Can't find it at 12 microns, can't really see it at 10.8, but when we subtract one channel from the other, magically, the plume appears. The color enhancement here highlights the ash in blue.
Wow.
The information was already there, but we couldn't find it until we subtracted one channel from another.
Very interesting.
It's almost magical. Similarly, let's say you're looking for fog up on the north slope. It's kind of a foggy neighborhood.
Sure.
In 11 micron and 3.9 micron, we've got a 3.9 micron image here. It's a big fuzzy blur over Barrow. We can't see where the fog is. But the information is lurking in there waiting for us to reveal it. All we have to do is find that difference between the 11 micron and the 3.9, and then this image becomes this image, and the fog bank jumps right out, and you can see it up there at Barrow. Now, you got to choose the right tool for the job. Like they say, you open your toolbox, all kinds of stuff in there. What do we need for this particular task? If you want to find volcanic ash, we look at 12 and 10.8 micron, find that difference. If you want to find fog, we'll look at 11 and 3.9 micron, find that difference. It's great, different tools for different jobs. Of course, there's always caveats and gotchas, but this fog procedure, it only works at night, because when the sun comes up, it gets in the way. So every product has its strengths and limitations, and in meteorology, the challenge is using the right tool for the right job, and these are some of those tools.
And discovery is still happening, even with meteorology. The weather's been around for a long time, but the tools that are being developed to understand the meteorology is fascinating and still very new science.
It's such a young science. We've come so far. I'm getting old enough now that I can literally say that, you know, when I was a boy, we didn't have this kind of thing. And there's new things happening all the time. New satellites will be launched in coming years that will have better instruments than ever before. It's an exciting time, and this is so helpful for Alaska because satellites help fill in the gaps between other ways of observing the weather. Satellites, the great equalizer for Alaska.
Yeah, and help so many people stay safe in so many ways every day up here in the last frontier.
Yeah, it's what it's all about, protecting lives and property.
Well, thank you so much for joining us again, Eric. We love to hear about this fascinating information, and boy, it just makes me want to go watch satellite pictures all day. So hopefully we're inspiring more people to do the same thing, and just be curious. It's a wonderful thing. Thanks for joining us for another edition of Alaska Weather Facts, and we'll see you next time.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back. Today's sea ice analysis. Not much change from yesterday. Nunivak Island pretty well surrounded by ice on into Kuskokwim Bay with about the same as far as ice extent goes, also northern Bristol Bay there, as well as northern Cook Inlet. And also up Norton Sound through the Bering Strait, St. Lawrence Island. Really not much change from yesterday. And with the warmer southerly winds coming in, especially along the southwest coast, we'll start seeing it erode and melt back here during the upcoming week. Coastal water forecast for tomorrow, northwest winds at 20 knots for the central and south coast there with 12 to 13 foot seas. West winds 20 knots on the north coast with 12 foot seas, and northwest 15 for Stevens Passage, or for Clarence Strait. Stevens Passage south at 10, pretty light there, and south 15 for Lynn Canal, 3 foot seas. Outlook for Tuesday, Lynn Canal, southeast, 15 knots. Small craft advisories for Stevens Passage, southerly or southeasterlies, 25 knots. And gales coming into Clarence Strait with speeds of about 35 knots. 40-knot winds on the central and south coast from the south. Good for gale warnings with seas at around 25 feet. Storm warnings on the north coast, 50-knot southeast winds with 27 to 28 foot seas. And for Cook Inlet, northern Cook Inlet, small craft advisories tomorrow. Northeast winds picking up to 25 knots and 30-knot northeast winds south of the Forelands. Small craft advisories, Kamishak Bay and the Barren Islands. Southeast and south winds there, 30 knots, 9 to 13 foot seas. Small craft advisories for the North Gulf Coast. For the west side, they'll be out of the southeast at 25 knots and around Middleton Island there in the eastern zone. Southwest, 25 knots with 12 foot seas. Prince William Sound, east winds, 20 knots, seas 4 feet. Outlook for Tuesday, hurricane force wind warning for Prince William Sound. We've got east winds at 70 knots. Hard to believe, but that's in the forecast. 17 foot seas. 70 knot winds also for the eastern North Gulf Coast. That's hurricane force wind warning. In fact, this is the first time I've seen 70 knot winds in the marine forecast. 31 foot seas. Storm warnings for the western North Gulf Coast, the Barren Islands, both out of the south, 50 knots, east 50 knots for Kamishak Bay. Excuse me, northeast 40 knots for southern Cook Inlet, 30 knots out of the northeast, north of the Forelands. And for Monday, Kodiak Island, east side, southeast 45 knots, and that extends all the way down to Castle Cape from the southeast at 45. and then 40-knot winds Castle Cape to Cape Saratchev there. From the south and the Bering Sea side of the Alaska Peninsula, southeast winds 30 knots. Gale warnings for Bristol Bay, southeast at 35. And for Tuesday, we've got southwesterlies at 40 knots for the east side of Kodiak Island, Bristol Bay, and the Alaska Peninsula, both southwest 30 knots, and Bristol Bay, south 25 knots with 8-foot seas. And out west, say west of Adak to Shemya, north winds tomorrow 30 knots, and then south winds 30 knots for Adak and Atka with 12 to 21-foot seas. Small craft advisories for the Fox Islands for south winds 25 knots for Unmak Island, Unalaska Island, southwest 25 knots. And then gales come into the picture, Unalaska Island, southwest 35 to 45 knots, and west 35 to 45 knots for Unmak Island, Adak and Atka, west-northwest 35 to 40 knots. And gales, minimum gales for Amchitka, 35 out of the northwest, and from Kiska to Shemya and Attu, winds will be northwest at 30 knots. And for Norton Sound, we've got northeast winds at 30 knots tomorrow, brisk wind advisories there, otherwise just under storm force St. Lawrence Island, winds coming up to 45 knots from the northeast, Yukon Delta coast east 45 knots, southeast 40 knots for the Yukon Delta coast, for the Kuskokwim Delta coastline there, south of Nunivak Island, Pribilof south 30 knots, 50 knots storm force winds for St. Matthew Island out of the northeast. And for Tuesday, those will swing around to the northwest, come down just under storm force there for St. Matthew Island with 21-foot seas. West 25 for the Pribilof, small craft advisories there. Kuskokwim Delta coast south at 30 knots, gale warnings. Yukon Delta coast south 40 knots, and then east 40 knots, Norton Sound. Turn northeast at 35 for St. Lawrence Island. Central and eastern Beaufort Sea coast tomorrow, east winds 20 knots. Brisk wind advisories for the west side there for those east winds at 25, and then from Cape Beaufort to Wales, east-northeasterlies at about 20 knots. And for Tuesday, east-northeast 35-knot winds all the way up to about Point Lay, and then 30-knot winds for the eastern Beaufort Sea coast. Quickly tonight, front coming in, pretty good storm rolls into the Gulf of Alaska on Tuesday.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.